Good morning. Welcome to the third day. Today, Wednesday, we have 3 sessions, and the first one is a pleasure to introduce Julia Hernandez from Google Cloud. She is a specialist in generative AI at Google Cloud, and she supports enterprise and digital native accounts across Spain and Portugal. And her work centers on architecture and deploying generative AI application, agentic workflows, RAG, pipelines, and all the technology that are the center and the focus of our summer school. Really, it's a pleasure to have 1 year again. Always we have a speaker for Google, and really, I am sure that we will enjoy with Julia's presentation about the proposal and the architecture from Google. Thank you very much, Julia.
Nice to meet you all. Thanks for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a quick summary on that. What I do pretty much is I work with the big clients in Spain, big banks, big telcos, big retailers, and I try to help them build AI projects, generative AI projects, like chatbots, image recognition systems, that type of stuff. So right now, a lot of AI agents, as you can imagine. What we're going to see today, it's what tools we have at Google Cloud and what different use cases and how can you build on top of the tools that Google Cloud has, how can you build generative AI projects. Okay. How many of you know Google Cloud? Most of you, okay. And how many of you have worked hands-on with Google Cloud? A lot of you as well. Okay. AWS, there's maybe some, so it'll be pretty similar, okay. The thing is, right now there's a big race with all the hyperscalers and the new OpenAI, new Anthropic players to build on top of, to create solutions and have enterprises develop solutions on top of their stack. But what I'm going to present here is the Google stack, okay? But honestly, like you can find a very similar stack in all the different clouds, okay? Cool. So this is what we're going to see today. Please, let's make it interactive. If you have questions or if you have tried the tools and you want to ask any questions, please stop me. I'm going to show some demos as well, so it's not only slides, okay? And this is a bit of what we're going to see, okay? It's all based on agentic development and agent development. So we're going to cover the LLM models we have in Google Cloud, how to do agent development, grounding, agent development kit, which is like LangGraph, okay, like the framework for developing agents, some other tools. And once we have our agent developed, how we deploy it, okay, how we deploy it, because this is the most important part, okay? Probably this is where all the enterprises are getting stuck. Everyone is doing really cool agents and doing really cool use cases, but how do you put this in production? And how do you make sure this scales, and how do you make sure people don't abuse of your agent and this type of stuff, okay? And then how you consume that agent. Cool, so a bit of the only publicity or the only thing I'm going to say that differentiates Google Cloud. I told you, like, you can find the stack pretty much in every hyperscaler, in every cloud, but this is true. Google Cloud is the only provider that has the whole stack, okay? I don't know if have you heard about TensorFlow Processing Units, TPUs? So that's a really good differentiator for us, because we're the only provider that have our own chips. And if you're seeing the stock price, that's why, okay? And if you're seeing NVIDIA stock price, that's why. So we have our own TensorFlow Processing Units, which are the ones that we're using to train Gemini. Okay, we're using those to train our own Gemini models, which gives us a bit of an advantage there. Okay. Then we also, apart from having our own TPUs, which NVIDIA, for example, has GPUs, we have Gemini models, which are our own LLMs that, for example, NVIDIA does not have or AWS does not have. So obviously train on those TensorFlow processing units. Then we have a whole stack on the agentic platform, okay, the agentic cloud, the agentic defense, a lot of tools for agentic development, for example, our own framework. And then we have the consumption part of the agents, okay, so a bit of the end-to-end of the stack. So let's deep dive a bit on the models that you can access through Google Cloud, okay? Probably, how many of you have tried Gemini already? Most of you? Okay, cool. How many of you think Gemini is the best model out there? Some of you, okay. How many of you think Anthropic is the best model out there? Claude, okay. That's good, because all of these models, Anthropic, except for OpenAI, which we don't have a partnership with, all of the models are within the Google Cloud Platform, you're gonna see. The thing is, like, for me, when I talk to big companies and I talk to users that are building projects, my models come and go. The models sometimes are better, sometimes are worse. Some models are better. For example, Gemini is for sure the best model in multimodality, okay, in audio processing, image processing, video processing. But for example, we have no issue saying Anthropic is very good at code, okay? So you have to keep this in mind when any of you are building a startup or building your own projects or doing anything like this? No, not yet? Well, when working with your companies or when going into the enterprise world, keep that in mind, okay? The models are very different. Every day a new model will come out, so you need to stay a bit on top of what's going on, okay? So Gemini 3 is the new, makes a shift on the agentic paradigm, okay? So we started with Gemini 1 or GPT whatever, GPT-1, when it was GPT-1, the models were only able to understand what you were saying, right? Which was good enough. They would understand your prompt and receive a response. You would receive a response, okay? Then a new shift happened when the new models, the new LLMs, started thinking, no? You would ask a question to the model would take some time and think about your question and then respond, okay? And now we're in this era, okay? The new Claude 4.7, the Gemini 3, the GPT-5s, where the models are all thought to take action, which means to do agentic workflows, okay? Call functions, orchestrate tasks. So all of the models right now are being developed to take action and interact with the real world, okay? With the physical, with the hardware and the software of our products, okay? So the main improvements we've done to the model are these three things you're gonna see. We've made a lot of improvements on multimodality and reasoning. Okay, Gemini again is for sure the best model in multimodality because it's the only model that's been trained from the ground up to be multimodal. Okay, the rest of the players are mostly ensemble of models. So if you know model ensembling, most of the rest of the models are an ensemble of models that can interact with audio and video and image. Okay, Gemini is built from the ground up to interact with all of those. A fun fact here. How long do you think the model's weights have not been published anymore? At the beginning, we would publish the model weights, us and the rest of the players, but we stopped doing that. But a bit of a fun fact: how many years do you think you would have to read for every single day for 8 hours to read everything that Gemini has been trained with? More or less.
2 million?
2 million?
10 to the 7.
10?
To the 7.
Okay, very mathematic, okay. Anyone else? A bit less, maybe, a bit more. It's 70,000 years, so not so much, but just for you to think about it, imagine if we were able to read for 70,000 years, 8 hours a day, and memorize every single thing. That's the key, okay? So these models are able to memorize, they read one page, and they memorize the whole page, okay? 70,000 years of information. So that's what the models are good at, memorizing and predicting the next word based on their memory, okay? Next thing that improves a lot, agentic coding. I don't know if you heard the buzz of anti-gravity a while ago, which tried to compete with Cloud Code. Well, anti-gravity is the tool we're launching for code development, okay? But it could be Cloud Code on top of Gemini, or it could be whatever you're using to code on top of Gemini. So it does a much better job in coding than the previous models. And finally, the key for our agentic use cases, this part, okay? It has a really good improvement on advanced tool use and planning. So it's able to have a task that requires multiple steps and kind of like split it around and decide what path needs to happen, okay? So for those of you that know Gemini, you probably know that there's 3 flavors, right? Flash, Pro, and Flash Lite, okay? So when I talk to users, my advice is always going to the Flash model, okay, the middle ground, okay? The Flash model will be kind of like your entry point to the Gemini models, because it's a model that is not too expensive and it's a bit faster than the Pro model, okay? And it can solve most of your tasks. But if you have a task that is a bit more complicated, then you would go to the Pro model, okay? And the Flash Lite is the very, very cheap model, very, very fast model for simpler tasks, okay? The cool part is that DeepMind was developing both of the models, okay? We have Google DeepMind developing the models. They usually have this difference in quality, and this is what they have achieved, okay? Why is this? It's because they're doing a lot of research on improving the size of the models, okay, and compressing the models. So they achieved a really small model, which is Gemini Flash, with very high capacity because they have been improving the compression of the models, okay? And again, finally, Flash Lite. So if you have use cases, you're developing a use case for translation or for simple, a sub-agent that does a simple task, go into Flash Lite. Very, very cheap, super, super fast, okay? When I talk to clients about the different providers, okay, for example, Anthropic has very powerful models, but the Haiku model is a bit expensive and a bit slow, okay? It's very, very powerful, so we'll compare to Flash or to Pro, but if you have a use case that you don't need that much power, then you should go to a model like Flash Lite, okay? Fine, so those are the general Pro, Flash, Flash Lite, Gemini models, okay? Then there's a lot of variants, okay? When we talk to DeepMind, the developers of Gemini, actually, all these variants that you're gonna see are Gemini itself, okay? The thing is, like, since the users, we're not ready to think that of a model doing the whole thing, doing audio processing, doing video processing, doing function calling, we split them, okay? But under the hood is all the same model with a final tuning for the specific task, okay? So one of the variants that we have is agentic vision on Gemini Flash. Let me show you this. When you think of, this is new, next, let's see, okay. When you think of a model understanding an image, you can imagine how an LLM works, right? It has a bunch of examples of, for example, this example, okay? I'm gonna ask the model how many fingers there's in a picture of a hand, okay? So if you can imagine how the model has been trained, it has been trained with millions of examples of hands with 5 fingers, no? Like the actual fingers. So you might think that if you pass the LLM a hand with 6 fingers, because it's been trained with 1,070,000 years of information on hands with 5 fingers, it might go wrong here. So it will treat the image and it might go wrong. What does this agentic vision thing do? Okay? Instead of directly interpreting the image, let's see if it works, what it does image processing with code. So it first generates some code to annotate the image, okay? And as you can see, it annotates the image with bounding boxes to count the fingers. So instead of directly processing the image, it's gonna treat the image with code. This code, we're gonna be able to reuse it 1,000,000 times, okay, because it's always gonna be the same code, and it counts the fingers based on the annotated image, okay, instead of the image itself. So this would be the first use case of an agent, okay? We have the LLM use some tool to treat images, okay? This is a very simple use case, but imagine, like, for example, let's see here, more complex use case where people are analyzing chips, where people are analyzing very, very specific stuff in images, okay? So we've seen a good use of this tool in enterprises, okay? So you can see it will generate bounding boxes and actually respond your question based on those bounding boxes, okay? So, for example, for the manufacturing industry, very, very useful use case. Cool. Second variant of Gemini. If you have played around with the Gemini app or with the GPT app, you know you can speak to it and it will respond, you can interrupt it. That is a variant of Gemini that is called the Live API or of any LLM, okay? What is this, why is this different than a regular LLM? A regular LLM, you make an HTTP call and you receive a response. So the channel goes, okay, I make a call, I wait for the call, and I receive the response. The Live APIs open a WebSocket, okay? A WebSocket is a channel that is always open, so the communication can go both ways, and I can interrupt the communication, all this type of stuff, okay? This is very interesting. If you are hands-on and you like playing around, the Live API is very cool because it goes far beyond sending a prompt and receiving a response, okay? You need to manage the client, you need to manage the server, and all this type of stuff, okay? I'm going to share these slides with you. So I'm leaving here. Wafai, this is a colleague of mine that works at Google that does work for clients, for big clients. We bring her in and she develops stuff, okay? And she's created this demo, which I'm not going to play because we'll have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time. But I'm leaving you here the code so you can see how to interact with Live API and her blog post, okay? And let me quickly show it. I don't know if it will sound.
Hello there.
Hello, Wafa. How can I help you today?
And she also shows how to interact with the Live API and multimodal inputs and all of this. Okay, this is very complex in the development.
Definitely
okay,
improve that.
So if you're interested, I definitely advise you to go into the code and see how this is done. Okay, cool. Another example of a variant will be text-to-speech flash, okay, which is if the Live API goes audio to audio, this goes text to audio. Okay, this is still HTTP and receive back. The voices are the same as the ones on the Live API, so I'm not going to show you a demo here. But this, for example, would be useful. Imagine if you have a chatbot that you do want the user to write in text and you want the chatbot to respond you with a speech. So you could use this type of model. It's very cool because you can do, if you've heard NotebookLM and all the podcasts that NotebookLM can do, is built on top of this. Cool. And also, like, Google is doing a lot of investment in open models. Okay, also GPT is doing investment in open models. What does this mean? Models that we actually know the weights. You can take the weights of the model, you can fine-tune the model. So the Gemma models are the open models that Google is developing. Okay, they're based on the same foundational training as Gemini, but they're open, so you can do a bunch of stuff with those. And another cool variant would be computer use, okay? If you use Cloud Code or if you are starting to do agentic coding, you probably have seen this type of models, which what can do is scroll, click, all this type of stuff. So for example, if you use Cloud Code and you ask the model, I want to create a UI, I want it to have this, this, and this, it will launch a browser, it will click, make sure that the UI has the functionality it needs. This is super, super cool, super cool. And again, I left here, let me see a quick demo so you can see what is, this is relevant because Wafai here leaves the terminal information. What the model is doing is nothing else than taking a screenshot of the screen, okay, and doing some function calls like scroll, function call scroll, so it will scroll and make a screenshot, click and make a screenshot, okay, and again, I'm leaving you here the code and the block. Let's see so you can see a quick example. Okay, these are the old models, so the new models are even better. So she's gonna say that find an outfit under 300 euros, and the model is gonna go into Amazon, it's gonna take a screenshot of this is all doing it the model itself. It's looking for blazer woman, it's gonna scroll and see the prices of the different clothes, okay, and it's gonna select the whole outfit just with the prompt, find an outfit for a woman, for a wedding, for under 300 euros, okay. Again, this part is very cool as well on the development. It's not just like an LLM and prompt and receiving the prompt back. So I'm leaving you here the code. Cool. Any questions up to this part? Cool. Okay. So I told you all about the Gemini models, but I acknowledge that there are better models out there for specific tasks. Okay. So that's why in Google Cloud we have the Model Garden. Okay. If you know Hugging Face, the Model Garden is our own Hugging Face that has passed certain quality standards and with partners that we have a partnership with. So for example, within Google Cloud, you can call the Anthropic models with the same API. And say, imagine, I don't know, BBVA. BBVA has a commit, I mean, I'm completely saying this randomly, it's not a, but say BBVA is committed with Google Cloud to spend 100 million in 5 years, for example. And in order to burn that commit, to spend that money, they want to use Anthropic models, but instead of buying it through Anthropic, they use them through here, okay? That way they can burn the commit and keep spending money in Google Cloud and have discounts and all of this type of stuff. Okay, so that's kind of like a strategy for enterprises. In the Model Garden, there are more than 200 models, okay? All the Llama models, obviously the Gemini models, all the Anthropic models, we have the open source models from GPT, all the Chinese models as well, so you can kind of like play around with every single thing. So let me show you in the console now. How many of you are familiar with, well, now it's called Agent Platform, but Vertex AI? It was before Vertex AI? Some of you? Okay, so 2 weeks ago we renamed everything and now it's called Agent Platform. So if you're looking for it, look for Agent Platform. Okay, so if you want to play around, Google has like a 300 euros or $1 free tier, okay, when you sign up. So honestly, the models are very, very cheap. So everything we're gonna do, probably today, will be less than $1 probably. So if you want to play around, feel free to play around. I think there's a student also discount there. This is the old Vertex AI, the new agent platform, okay? Everything related to AI and agents is gonna be here. So if I look, this is a Google Cloud project, okay? This is my Google Cloud project, I'm logged in here. And there's a lot of tools, okay? There's BigQuery, there's databases, but I search for agent platform and I land here, okay? And you can see there's the studio, which I'm gonna show you now, the models, everything related to agents, and the part of the development, Colab Enterprise and Workbenches. So first I'm gonna show you the model garden, okay? This is the model garden, okay? So I told you there's more than 200 models. As you can see here, you can see all the, for example, now this is the latest news, and now we have the Grok models available, we have a DeepSeek V4, so you could play around here and see what each model does, see the different models from the different partners. Say, for example, you want to explore the meta models because you want to deploy it in your own infrastructure, okay, because you want an open model. The meta models, the Llama models, as you know, they're open source, well, they're open, so you have the weights in Hugging Face and you can deploy it wherever, right? So in our case, in Google Cloud for enterprises, we offer both flavors. We offer the clients to deploy in their own infrastructure, or we offer them to call it as an API service, the same way you would call GPT or you would call Gemini. Okay, so in pretty much pay as you go or pay for infrastructure. So if you go into each model, you can see a bit of what you can do. Okay, you can see the use cases, you can see the different sizes of the models, you can see when it was released, the use cases, etc. Okay? And as I was telling you, the ones that are open, you could deploy it. So for example, let's play around. The good thing of this deployment path is that if you've played around with open models, you know how hard it is to quantify, given the size, how many GPUs do I need, etc. Okay? So here you get like a predefined infrastructure to deploy those models, okay? So here you're gonna spend a lot of money because you're gonna need 8 GPUs in this case, okay? And you will click deploy and this will deploy it to your infrastructure, okay? This is relevant for enterprises because, for example, a bank, maybe they cannot call an endpoint that is in Europe, generic. Maybe they need to call an endpoint that is in a Madrid data center, okay? So I would go here and select a specific region to deploy my model, okay? So this is for regulatory industries is very, very important, okay? So you could deploy, for example, in Madrid or wherever you want. And then there's a bunch of services for tuning, which for all the models, for Llama, for Anthropic, for Gemini, to do parameter efficient fine tuning, okay? Which is the last layers of tuning of the models. Cool, so that's about models. Let's go into the agent platform. Any questions here? This is so... There we go. Cool. So we have our models. How do we build on top of the models? Okay. Again, many options. Okay. The thing, Google is pretty open, so we try to provide the users with experience to build their agents however they would like. Okay. In your case, that you guys are techie, for what I've heard, you probably are doing high-code agents. Okay. How many of you know LangGraph? Most of you, I guess. How many of you are hands-on with LangGraph? Okay, some of you. How many of you know ADK, Agent Development Kit? Okay, and how many of you are hands-on with ADK? No? Cool. So, Agent Development Kit, this is interesting as well, is the framework we have at Google for developing agents, okay? Before we had Agent Development Kit, LangGraph is an open source program, okay? So Google was putting money, a lot of money, on engineers helping develop LangGraph, okay? Pushing code to the LangGraph repo and all of this, okay? Because LangGraph is pretty good, honestly. But they found out, or they realized, that Gemini has certain characteristics, like the multimodality part, the live API, that were not being exploited by a generic framework, because LangGraph works well with every model, okay? So it's a generic framework for every model. So then they started develop Agent Development Kit, okay, which is a framework that is also open, it's on GitHub open, you can push code there, but it works best with Gemini. You could use any model, but it works best with Gemini. The cool part is, for example, I was in London with a bunch of digital natives a couple weeks ago, and a guy from DeepMind came and told us they're using internally in DeepMind Agent Development Kit to optimize how TPUs process code. Okay, so we are internally using Agent Development Kit for really, really cool stuff. Okay, and a note here: when I see big enterprises, like for example Orange, which is a public reference, so no problem there. They're very, very techy because before they were MassMobile, which was a digital native they joined, so they have very technical people there, and they use both. They use for some use cases LangGraph, from some use cases ADK. Okay. So it's not like you use one and you cannot use the other. So I recommend you to play around with both, especially if you're trying to get into the enterprise world to have some experience, okay? So that would be high-code agents. Then we have a product for low-code agents, so agents that you develop a bit more in a simpler way. And then we have an interface for no-code agents, okay, like the GEMS or the GPTs, this type of stuff. We're going to focus on the high-code agents in this case, okay? Developing a high-code agent, deploying it, and consuming it. Okay. So the first thing an agent needs is grounding. Okay, you need to ask your model to be grounded in specific information, right? If you ask the LLM a question, a generic question, we would all have the same agent. Okay, it needs to be grounded on my data, on your data, so it does the task that you guys want to do. Okay. So grounding pretty much is this. Okay, you have your user query and you do the retrieval from X type of information, from private data, from the real-time world information, from third-party data, okay? The different solutions we have in Google Cloud is obviously grounding with your data, vector database, all this type of stuff, okay? But then we have these three things that are, because we're Google, it's easier for us to provide a service to ground with Google Search, for example, or to ground with Google Maps, okay? And this in between is the same as this, but for public sector and finance and all of this is a bit of a restricted data set that complies with their compliance needs, okay? But basically grounding with Google Search, grounding with Google Maps, or grounding with your data. We've seen from use cases, from different use cases, that grounding with Google Search, obviously it has the LLMs, I don't know if you know how they work, not the LLM when you go into ChatGPT or when you go into the Gemini app, okay? An LLM when you call the API. Those LLMs have a knowledge cutoff, so they were trained until, say, January 2026, and that's where their knowledge ends, okay? So if you ask how the Arsenal game went yesterday, they won't know. So with grounding, obviously you reduce the hallucinations a lot, okay? A lot of enterprises are doing this. How does the grounding with Google Search work? Which would be an example of doing grounding on your data, okay? So for example, a user asks, compare the career of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. The grounding service does 10 parallel searches, so generates 10 different queries, goes into Google Search, retrieves those answers, and generates a response.
Don't need to compare. Cristiano is the better.
You think? I don't agree. I'm a Real Madrid fan, but... Okay. okay. It's the GOAT, for sure it's the GOAT. And also it does sequential Google searches, okay? So when you're thinking of building a RAG service, this is, for example, how Google has built a RAG service, parallel searches and sequential searches. Let's see an example, okay? So you can play around. Let me copy the prompt. Okay. So now I'm going to show you the studio as well, okay? So if you want to play around with this, if you want to play with Gemini, with Anthropic, with whatever model that we have in Google Cloud, you can play here, okay? We have this studio, which is, you probably will see this and think, oh, this is the same. Do you know AI Studio? Okay. AI Studio is the consumer version of this, okay? The difference between AI Studio and this is it has enterprise terms of service. Your data is not used to train the models, this type of stuff, okay? But for basic use cases, feel free to use AI Studio. For your enterprise, do not use AI Studio, go into this, okay? So this is the same as AI Studio, but again, with Google Cloud Tenemos a service, you can call me and say this is not working, and I have to respond pretty much. Okay. Good. So here, you can interact with the different models. I told you like we have a bunch of models already pre-deployed, so obviously we have the Gemini models, but as you can see here, you could also test here all the Anthropic models, all the DeepSeek models that we have deployed, the meta models, okay? So we provide the enterprise with one single place to test all the models. And from here you can do grounding, so let's ground on Google Maps in this case. Well, let me ground on Google Search.
Well, do you happen to have some sort of automatic decision what model to use? Like Perplexity type thing?
No, that's also that's a really good question because we have a bunch of use cases for that. At the beginning, because we don't even have a service to choose between Pro, Flash, and Flashlight. It's up to the client. At the beginning, very beginning, we did have a service that, based on the difficulty of your query, would route you to one of the versions. But we didn't see much interest because the clients in the end, or the enterprises or the use cases, exactly. So they play around, and this model works best for this use case, I go with this. And if not, you would have to go to a Perplexity service, something like this. And I haven't seen investment in our site on that part, so I assume it's not...
Do you save money out of that, especially if the query is super simple?
Yeah, the thing is like, since we give the user the possibility of using a simple model, we put the responsibility on you.
And you're going to pay, that's it.
Exactly. And if you use the Pro, more money for us. So, cool. Let me go into a simple. So I'm going to ask a silly question. So since I'm a smart girl, I'll use the cheap model, okay, Flashlight. I'm going to say without grounding, so you can see the difference. What was the score of yesterday's Atletico game? Okay, this is going to hopefully, exactly, prove my point. Okay. On Sunday, October 27th. Okay, perfect. This is proving my point. So today we're in April, and the model is telling me something about October 28th. Obviously not so smart, no? But every single model, I'm using a 3.1 model, state-of-the-art model. If you use Claude 4.7, if you use GPT, it will give you a similar stupid answer, because they have a knowledge cutoff. Probably these models were trained until October 2025. That's why they do this. So how do you give your users a real-time experience? You do grounding. So if I ground with Google Search and run the same query, I don't never know how to do this. Let me try like this. Exactly, cool. See, a simple model, okay, the cheapest model is able to, so keep this in mind, always use cheap models when you need, or for me, use the big model so I can make more money. But as you can see here, this has done really, really fast, so it proves again my point of the Flashlight, really, really fast. It has searched a bunch of different sources and is being grounded on real-time data. So it knows that yesterday was my fifth and that Atletico lost, which I'm happy about because I'm a Real Madrid fan. And you can see here the different queries that it did, okay? So the grounding service, if I'm doing this in the studio, okay, this is just for the demo purposes, but if you do it via API and you see the API response, you can see each chunk that the model, each website that the model went to, each chunk that the model pulled out, etc. Okay. And let's do the same with maps. Okay, so let me create a new chat so you can see an example of the maps. And I'm gonna say, I'm currently at this institute, give me some good high rating coffees, etc. Okay, so this might look like a simple use case, but imagine the typical enterprise use case that is putting a chatbot for their users. Okay, it needs to be grounded in enterprise data, in real data. Okay, so grounding with search and grounding with map, very, very relevant. Okay, and again, pues you can see here that it went actually to the Google Maps. Hopefully, let's see. There we go. It actually went to where we are and found the information on Google Maps. Okay, so very relevant grounding. Cool. Any questions? Okay, cool. But what if you want to, because this is Google's data, what if you want to ground on your own data? Okay, this is what you need to do to ground on your own data. Say you have, I don't know, all the university papers, and you want to create a chatbot for the students to ask questions on the papers that the previous students have done. If an engineer wants to do this, it will have to do all these steps. First, it will have to get all the PDFs or all the data and do some parsing and chunking and cut those PDFs in certain chunks. Convert those chunks into numbers so the model can do the retrieval there, so do embeddings. Store those embeddings. Then when the user asks a question, one that's built, they would need to do query rephrasing and doing the search on those embeddings. They would need to do re-ranking of the responses. So if you've done RAG or you've played around with RAG, you know this is a bit hard, right? Or a bit hard, it is a process, okay? So in Google Cloud, there's different services, okay? There's an out-of-the-box service, which I'm going to show you, where you pass a folder and Google Cloud does the whole thing for you, okay, or services that the whole thing for you. You have an intermediate service, which is called RAG Engine, which is like an orchestration layer, and then you have the platform, okay? The platform would be a vector database, an embedding model, a ranking API, a grounding API, okay? So pretty much from out of the box to build it yourself. Let me show you really fast this out of the box. So the out of the box will do the whole thing for you. You will point it to a data set, to a specific type of data, and it will do all the embeddings, all the chunking, the storage, and it will give you a retrieval service, okay? This is very cool. A lot of, for example, the Catalan government uses it on it's a public reference as well, uses it on its website. So it put a chatbot on the website so the users can ask about everything within their website. Okay, and they didn't build it themselves, they use this type of service. Let me show you really fast. So here, agent platform. Again, so if you're searching for anything related to agents, it would be here. So I think is, and I never know, here. They changed this with I/O, so I never know where anything is searched. There we go. Cool. So how do you build this type of search out of the box? If you see here, there's different options, okay? Pretty much this will be the basic standard option, and then this would be website search, and this would be for media catalogs, say I'm Netflix database, and this would be for Zara's database, okay, for a commerce database, for example. But if you want to create a general basic RAG, you would go here, okay? You would click Create. You can enable or disable the generative AI function, so you could have only the retrieval or the retrieval plus the answer generation. This is the only thing you need to do. Give a name to your company, select where your data is going to be stored, and connect it to a data store. Okay, so here, if you connect it to a data store, as I told you, you need to point it to a certain type of data. So I can connect it to my website, I can connect it to a BigQuery table, I can connect it to a storage, or a bunch of different connectors that are here. Okay, an MCP, etc. But I'm going to do the simple stuff. Okay, I'm going to connect it to a folder in my Google Cloud Storage with a bunch of PDFs. So I'm going to tell the model I'm using unstructured documents, okay, PDFs, HTML, TXTs, but you can see there's a million options. And I can tell it how frequent I want it to synchronize. So say I'm updating those PDFs, I would say streaming, okay? But if it's a one-time ingestion, one time. And then I will paste the folder, okay? So here is a bunch of folders that I have. Say, for example, here I have a demo for Mexico. I'll point it there. I'll show you what I have inside later, okay? Click continue, give a name to the data store, and done, okay? This will be it. Obviously, it takes a bit of time to index all the documents, so I already have it done, okay? So if you wait 10-15 minutes, you would have this type of stuff, okay? These are my different RAGs that I have. I'm gonna go to this one. So what I have here, if you see the data, just so you can see how easy it is, I have 94 documents, okay? Let me show you two of them. In this case, I'm doing a RAG on top of Google Alphabet's earning calls, okay? So it's not simple PDFs, it's the second quarter results with a bunch of tables on the earnings of Google Cloud, and if I see here, this is a different type of document with the transcript of the earnings, okay? So in my folder, I have 94 of those documents. Just by pointing this service to that, I get this, okay? I get this preview, this widget. Let's see. I'm connected. There you go. So I already have my RAG. Okay, so I can what was Google Cloud's revenue in 2021? Okay. So it's embedding my query, doing the query rephrasing, going into each of the documents where I have 2021 reports, and generating a response. Okay, so you get a RAG pretty simple, pretty out of the box. Okay, obviously, I'm showing you, and it seems like magic. Okay, it has its limitations. You cannot tune it so much. You cannot control all the things. Okay, so that's the typical question of: do I go out of the box or do I build myself? Do I want the whole control? I build it myself. Am I good enough with this? I go with this type of stuff. Okay. And this, for example, is what I told you, like the Catalan government embedded this widget in their website, done, you know, some tuning, obviously, not so easy, but pretty straightforward, okay? Cool, and all of this, you can use it within an agent, okay? So I'm gonna show you how to use this within an actual LangGraph or ADK agent, okay? But I'm not gonna show you now. Cool. So that would be an out of the box. If you wanted to do it yourself, okay, build it yourself because you want more control over what's happening, you could use this second step, which would be an orchestration layer on top of the APIs, which is pretty much an API that orchestrates the different APIs. So instead of calling each of the API specifically, you call the RAG Engine API and orchestrate the ingestion, orchestrate the retrieval, and orchestrate the generation, okay? I'm not gonna go into that because I could speak about that for 2 hours as well. And finally, the build-it-yourself platform, okay? Which is, as I told you, instead of orchestration, using directly each of the APIs, okay? Cool. I'll note here, one of the cool APIs or the cool services we have is Vertex AI Vector Search. So where do you store vectors? Or where do we store vectors in Google Cloud or in Google? In vector search. So vector search, for example, is an example, a very good example of how Google and Google Cloud work, okay? Google, obviously, and YouTube and all of this needs to store millions of millions vectors for the YouTube searches, for Google Play searches, and for Google. And they develop a vector database, okay, which is called vector search. So in Google Cloud, we kind of like get that product that Google developed and put it on top of give it for the enterprises, okay? So you can kind of like rely on a service that is serving the whole world, okay, the scale of the world. And something very cool we launched a couple of weeks ago is this embedding model, okay? We launched a multi-model embedding model based on the Gemini technology that instead of embedding text, if you know how an embedding works, you convert a text to a number, you convert an image to a number, it embeds every single format into the same embedding space. So this is really good for image search. Let me show you an example. This is one of the use cases I work with, okay? Let me, I don't know, Adidas, Gazelle. This is an example of embedding, okay? It's gonna embed my query, my text, and it's retrieving content based on the text and the images, okay? So it's searching both in the same embedding space, okay? And now let me show you an example of how multi-model embeddings work, because that could be just a text embedding, okay? I'm gonna save this image. Since I have multimodal embeddings, I can search by text, but I can also search by embeddings, okay? So by image. And I'm doing the search in the same embedding space, okay? This is our public, our safety, security policies. So see, I search by text and I search by image and I'm searching in the same embedding space. It's not that trading has a million different embedding databases. It has one single embedding database with both the images, the text, so I can search in every single format, okay? So that would be an example of multimodal embeddings. We are the only player that has multimodal embeddings. There's open source multimodal embeddings, but again, they work like ensemble models. It's not one single model. And this is the example you just saw. Okay, so it will store text, images, and video in the same space. So when I search, regardless of the format, I go into that region of the embedding space. So I can retrieve either images, text, or whatever. I'm leaving you here a bunch of resources.
When talking about multimodal stuff, what can you not do right now that you expect it to be available in the future? If I, for example, use it for a research paper, something I love any model to actually be able to do is to interpret plots. Right?
Yeah.
Scientific ones.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think will be available or too specific?
The thing is, with that, there's been a lot of issues, because same thing for, imagine the typical use case of consulting a database. When we started LLMs, we thought that if I send a prompt, give me the sales of last year, or give me all the papers that had been launched in the last year, you would thought that that will go into a structured database and retrieve the use case, but that doesn't work like that, okay? Because how the LLMs work is predicting the next work. So work is being done in that space in the sense of workarounds, because you're never going to be able to interpret an LLM, which is a text-based model, is never going to be able to interpret a graph. So the use case I'm seeing in that space is having the LLM pre-process the image and generate a text description. So that's the only, or interpret the image instead of the plot itself. But in the end, the models are text models, so it's going to be always hard to do that type of stuff. But I'm seeing work doing, same thing as I showed you the agentic vision for Flash. So that's the ways, the path we're going, like patching stuff that is not working with that type of stuff. But I don't think the LLM itself will ever be able to do that type of stuff, at least in my opinion. Probably a new architecture, and that is not a transformer, hopefully soon, but not yet. But workarounds, for sure. I'm seeing a lot of use cases on that space. Cool, leaving you here a bunch of resources so you can play around, okay? Cool, so let's go into ADK. I have time, I'm good on time, okay. ADK, as I told you, is the framework for developing agents, so we're gonna see code already, okay? Let me go really fast on this. To develop an agent, you could, same thing, it's the same thing as the RAG. You could do it yourself and call the Gemini API or the GPT API and the Claude API and generate function calls with code. You could do that, okay? You're gonna kill yourself probably, but you could do that. If not, you could use a framework, okay? A framework that abstracts you from the APIs. The lowest level framework, which you would have the most control, would be LangChain, okay? A framework like LangChain that goes really, really deep into the API, so you have a lot of controls. Honestly, no one is using LangChain anymore, okay? Pretty much. Maybe some people are, but 90% of the use cases are up here, okay? On top of LangChain. So LangChain, since it was very, very deep level, developed LangGraph, which is a higher level of abstraction, so it's simpler. And we develop Agent Development Kit, okay, which is even simpler. You're gonna see, because it's really, really simple. And again, most of my clients use both. So it's not that you use one and you're done. You can use both, okay? And then there's like the no-code platforms, which for certain use cases could be good. Cool. So what are the main key points of Agent Development Kit, okay? You can define multi-agent systems really, really simple. So this would be a multi-agent system. I'm gonna show you in a demo. It has a really cool dev UI. For me, this is the most important or the most relevant part. I'm going to show you in a demo as well, so no worry there. It has support from long-running tools and human in the loop. What does this mean? Say, for example, I put an agent in my website, and the user asks a question, and it needs to go into a database and search in 1 million files. I don't want the user to be waiting like this, okay? So long-running sync tools are tools that run in the background of the agent, so you can still interact with the agent while the tool is being run. This is very relevant. As I told you, it's built, ADK is built to get the best out of Gemini, but you could use any model because it's an open framework. Has support for MCP, obviously. And it has Python. The Python SDK is the most developed, the one that has the most development done, but it also has Go, Java, and TypeScript SDK, okay? To me, it's crazy. People, a big enterprise is still using Java, a lot of Java, so there's a good investment on Java as well. Okay, what are the main concepts? The main concepts of ADK are the LLM agent, which would be the instructions and the model. So I'm using Gemini, and your task is to tell me the weather. That will be the agent, okay? Then it has tools, which is, for example, to tell me the weather, you need to access the weather API, okay? That will be a tool. And then, so this is the basic that everyone imagines. Then these are the actual things that make an agent work, any agent, okay? An agent needs to run somewhere, okay? It needs to execute somewhere. So that would be the runner, okay? And an agent needs to hold a state and to hold my conversation and know what I talked the previous phrase, okay? So it has session and state. Let me show you an example. I'm going to skip this really fast. Well, no, I'm going to skip it because I'm going to show you. Okay. Tools. You have a million tools. Okay. You can. The good thing of ADK or any framework pretty much would be that now you can call any tool with an MCP. You wrap your API in an MCP, and you can call that. But you can call your different APIs with OpenAPI or with a Python function, etc. Okay? And then obviously it has built-in tools for the typical service. So for example, for the service that I show you on the grounding out of the box, it has a tool. I'm going to show you. And a cool thing that ADK has, it has evaluation built in. So say I'm interacting with my agent, I'm developing my agent, and I have some test use case I want to test. So say, for example, my agent that was searching on my earning calls. So I can always know that the YouTube earnings in 2021 were XX millions, or the Google Cloud losses that year were XX millions, okay? So I can save those as test use cases and run evaluations, and I can compare the new execution of the agent versus my expected result and get some metrics. This is where most enterprises are stuck right now, because they build cool agents. They're like kind of like deploying them pretty good, but then they don't have an evaluation framework, so they don't know if it's working. A new model comes out, and they don't know if the new model is doing better than the previous model, okay? So if I was you, and I wanted to add value to my company, I would study agent evaluation. And it's also like the big players, like us and AWS and Anthropic and all of us, are making a lot of investment on developing evaluation frameworks. Cool. So I'm going to show you ADK, okay? Here is a repo. I'm going to share with you. This is my own repo that I use with clients. It's an end-to-end workshop on literally building the simplest agent to building an agent that does whatever you can imagine, okay, a robot agent pretty much, okay, a really, really complex agent. So I'll share this repo with you. It has a guide with it, but let me show you how you build an agent. Okay, this is my repo in local. Let me see, because I have here what I wanted to show you, because I have a million agents here. Okay. Let me show you a really simple agent first. Weather agent here. This is each of my folders are an agent, okay? This is a structure of an agent. You have your agent.py, and you have your .m file with your credentials and all of this, okay? So in my .m is use Vertex AI, which is the new agent platform. If I don't say use Vertex AI, it would use AI Studio, the consumer API. I pass my project. I tell the agent where I want it to run in Madrid. In this case, this is the Madrid region, and I tell the model the agent what model I'm using. Okay. And how does an agent look? This is a simple agent with a tool. Okay. So I told you the basic stuff of an agent is an LLM agent. You can see here. You import that LLM agent from ADK. You give the agent a name. For if you're going to reuse it later, you pass the model to the agent, you give the instructions. This description is optional. If I deploy it, I would see the description, and then you pass a tool. Okay, this would be the simplest way to create an agent. This is ADK. As you can see, if you use LangGraph, it's very, very simple. Okay, and then my tool is a Python function in this case. Okay, with that, I will have my agent. Okay, let's go into a bit of a more complex agent. So I show you, remember the drag out of the box tool I use? I show you with the Alphabet earnings, this is how you would load it, okay? In ADK, in LangGraph is pretty similar, okay? So I load the same thing, the LLM agent, okay? And now I can load some pre-built tools. So in this case, I'm gonna load the Vertex AI search tool, okay? This, forget about it right now, because I'm gonna show you later. So with that, I'm giving the agent the path to the data store, okay? So this is the path where my data was stored, my embedded data was stored, and I already can instantiate the tool with that path, okay? So I'm telling the agent to search, or the tool to search for that database, for that embedding database. And with that, I would have my agent, okay? So I tell, okay, you're a helpful assistant, you use the tool to answer questions, and I pass the tool, okay? And now you see this concept of output key, okay? Output key would be where I store the state, okay? So the response of this LLM agent is gonna be stored in this output key, Vertex AI search result. So So with that, I'm gonna create a more complex agent, okay? Now you're gonna see, so we've seen 2 dummy agents, we're gonna see an actual complex agent. Imagine this use case, okay? I want to do search. I'm same use case, okay? I want to do search of the Alphabet earnings, but I want to search in my personal data, and I also want to search in Google Search. And I want to compare both results and see if the data in Google Search and my data are the same, okay? So with that use case in mind, I can create a multi-agent that search in Google Search and search in my personal data, okay? So this is how I create multi-agents. It's very, very simple, okay? I'm importing the agent from the previous step, the one that you just saw, the one that's searching in my database. I'm creating a new agent that uses the Google Search tool, okay? So in this case, you're a helpful assistant, you use Google Search tool, okay? So this is gonna search in Google Search with the grounding on Google Search that we saw. And this is the easiest, the simple way to create multi-agents, okay? So I can import this library called Parallel Agent that is gonna perform parallel search in my Google Search agent and my Vertex Search agent, okay? So with that simple library, which I'm importing from here, I'm gonna search in parallel in Vertex, o sea, in my private data and in Google Search, okay? And finally here, I create a supervisor agent that, as you can see, your job is to compare and synthesize both results from my private data and from Google Search, okay? So this is where the state comes in. How can I have this agent read the data from the previous agents? With the keys, with the output keys that I pass. Remember, the state keys, okay? So finally, I have my parallel agent that does the search in parallel. I have a supervisor agent. Now I can create a multi-agent that does the parallel search, and once that parallel search is done, it does the supervision, okay? So the first thing I told you about the ADK is really simple to create multi-agents. I hope with this you saw it, okay? The second thing I told you is that there's a really cool dev UI. So I'm developing my agent in my Visual Studio in local. How can I test this agent without running any code, okay? The ADK library has when I do pip install ADK, I get this out of the box, okay? So I run ADK web, and this gives me a server, a UBCon server running in my local where I can interact with my agent, okay? So I'm gonna use, these are all the agents that, I don't know why it's so small. These are all the folders that I had in my repo. If I select an agent, I can interact with it. So what was Google Cloud revenue? I don't have a lot of imagination, so I always ask the same thing. Okay, so this is running in my local host, okay? It's running in my local host in the port 8000, and I can interact with the agent and during the development and see how this is being worked, okay? So what I told you that my agent did parallel search, so it searched in my private data, and it searched in Google Search, and then the supervisor agent, so it's working well, okay? Some cool things that you can do in this dev UI. I can see the traces, okay? So my whole agent, it took 11 seconds. I can see that the search was done in parallel, okay? So you can see here the Alphabet earning and the Google Search agent, it was done in parallel, and once that finished, the supervisor agent came in. Okay, so all of this is out of the box. I can see the state, okay? So I remember I was saving in the different keys, the different outputs of the agents. If I had artifacts, images, etc., I would have it here. I can see the different events, okay? I can see, what else? So I can go for each of the events, okay? The user ID, what was being done, the different spans, okay? So it's pretty cool to debug your agents when you're developing, okay? This is all out of the box with the ADK library. Cool, and in the eval, this never works, so I always have to, there we go. In the eval, you could imagine actually developing an agent, and I want to save this answer as ground truth. I could go here and add this session as part of my evaluation data set, okay? And then I could run every single evaluation that I've done, okay? So you can do a bunch of stuff from the dev UI, okay? Very cool. If you see what's being done here, the eval set, it saves the question with the response, and then the agent will compare this response to the other ones, okay? So this is ADK, the multi-agents and the dev UI. Any questions here? Because we're getting a bit more deep here. I encourage you to play around with it, okay? Here you can see the evaluation metrics that you can test. So this is pretty cool, okay? It's gonna run each of the use cases and test the actual response with the grounded response. Cool, let me close this. Okay. Okay, let me close that and this. So that for ADK, okay? Now, I've talked a lot about MCP. How many of you know MCP? I assume most of you, no? Okay, MCP is an Anthropic protocol, open protocol, Anthropic developed, but it's open to interact with your APIs. So every single, imagine you guys have an API for checking your retail database, and I have an API for checking prices. We all wrap it in the same server, in the same style of server. So if he consults my server, he consults it the same way as her server, okay? We all consult the API in the same way, because if not, it will be crazy. If I have my own API, you have your own API, and you have your own API, when we create agents, we wouldn't know how to interact with that, okay? So that's MCP, okay? Then there's a lot of other open protocols that have been launched, okay? Agent to UI, which is to generate custom UIs. On the commerce part, there's a lot of protocols to how do you enable an agent to make a payment. How do you enable an agent to buy things through the ChatGPT app, okay, or through the Gemini app? And then the agent development, okay? This is a whole world. Again, we could be here for ages. So I left here a really cool example, okay, with all the protocols, a dev guide with all the protocols, okay, which is an example of an agent that checks a database to see the stock. With that stock, it makes a call to another database with the price, it consults another agent, okay? So I'm leaving it here, because this is a whole world, but if you're interested, there's the dev guide, okay? These are protocols that everyone are using, okay? So these are not Google protocols, they are protocols that every person is using, especially MCP and agent to agent, okay? If you know Copilot, for example, which is complete or adversary, okay? Google Cloud and Copilot, they're also using agent to agent, okay? We are all exposing our agents with this protocol so everyone can consume those. So please take a look at this if you're interested in this part, okay? And that's what I told you about agent to agent, okay? So agent to agent will be the way of exposing my agent so everyone can consume it. In ADK, it's very simple to expose an agent as agent to agent, okay? So with this simple library, okay, I can convert my regular ADK agent to an A2A agent, okay? This would already convert my agent to an agent-to-agent agent that anyone can consult, okay? I don't have a lot of time, but there's an example. Let me show you really fast. So what I'm doing here is using this, creating a server on top of my agent to agent, okay? So now my agent is running in this URL, okay? So let me copy this. This is agent to agent, okay? So agent to agent is literally this, is exposing your agent, and in this path of your agent, in this well-known .agent card, you would say what your agent does, okay? So my agent, it searches for information on Vertex search, this is the ID, this is the tools that it has available, this is where it's running. So imagine this is running in an actual production environment and not in my local host, and you guys want to do searches on my information. You would access this URL and know that what my agent does and how to consume it, okay? So this is agent to agent. But again, this is a very interesting concept, and every player is making a lot of developments in agent to agent, so if you're interested, take a look at it and do a bit more of a deep dive, okay? Opa. I click on whatever. Cool. So I don't know if you knew, but last week we have our Google Cloud Next, which is where they announce a bunch of new stuff. And some new things that are announced on ADK is, as you saw, my ADK was instructions, tools, etc. But we have launched graph-based workflows. So if you know LangGraph, we have launched an easier way to make graphs with ADK. We have also launched dynamic workflows, which is instead of running your agents with a prompt, you run it with a trigger. Okay, so a bunch of updates there. And for all of you that are using agentic development, so if you're using Cloud Code or Antigravity or Cursor or whatever, and if you want to play around with ADK, we launched this Agents CLI. Okay, so you install these skills on your agent development platform, and you get a simpler way to develop ADK. Cool. So other tools for development, MCP tools for databases, okay? This is, if you have your Postgres or your Cloud SQL, how you connect to that data. We have MCP servers for that. We have managed MCPs for the main services, or for Looker, for BigQuery. I'm not gonna show you this. And then we have Agent Garden, okay, and Agent Studio, which I'm gonna show you right now. Okay, so Agent Garden and Agent Studio are, okay, I'm starting to play around with Google Cloud, I'm starting to play around with ADK, but I don't know much yet. I can go here into Agent Platform, and in Agents, I have Agent Garden. Okay, Agent Garden is a bunch of examples of ADK agents. So for example, an ADK agent to do data science, so what we were asking, to create visualizations, understand insights, query databases, or an ADK agent for a marketing agency. Okay, so I can click on it and I can see the agent on GitHub. So you have a bunch of examples of different agents, okay, if you want to play around with that. So that would be Agent Garden. Agent Garden is nothing else but like a bunch of examples of different agents, okay? Cool. And you also have Agent Studio, okay, which I never know. Here in Studio, if you don't know how to start with creating an ADK agent, I can do it in a no-code fashion. Okay, so I go into Agents, New Agent, and I have the no-code interface, okay? So say you are an agent, say that we want to do the same thing, no? You console, Vertex AI search, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm not gonna do much. Okay, you pass the model and you give it the tools. I will connect it to my data store, point it to the data store, etc. Okay, and say I want to do what I did, no? I want to create 2 sub-agents, one connected to all search. Okay, you can play around here with this. You have a preview to, once you fill all the fields, to play with your agent. But the cool part is if I click here and get code, I get the ADK code. Okay, so this would be the simpler way to get started. And as you see here, I have the LLM agent, the sub-agent, and the different agent architecture. Okay, so this is the simpler way to get started. Okay, and the last thing I wanted to show you is this deploy. Okay, so if my agent was already being developed, or I have developed it in local, and I did all my testing, I did all my evaluation, how do I deploy this to production? Okay, right now I cannot do it because it's not filled. Okay, but if it was filled, I could deploy it. So what are the options to deploy agents in Google Cloud? Any questions here? Because I was a bit fast there. So you saw grounding, you saw agent development. I'm leaving the slides with all the links so you can play around with that, okay? But just to cover, we've seen the LLMs, we've seen how to ground those LLMs in your data or in public data, we've seen how to construct with code an agent, and how to test it in local, and how to evaluate it in local. How do enterprises deploy agents? Which means, instead of running in my local host, how do I have this running in the cloud or in a productive environment? These are the options to deploy an agent, okay? To deploy an agent, what everyone is doing is making a container, okay, and taking it to Kubernetes, or taking it to a container service like Cloud Run, okay? So those will be the main 2 options, or taking it to your on-premise. And then there's this third option, okay, which is called Vertex AI Agent Engine. Okay, in AWS, there's the same service called Agent Core, okay? So this is pretty much a service that is a container service, but for agents, okay? What does it mean that is for agents? So to run an agent, you need the runtime, so the place where the agent is running, and say if we all go into the agent, it scales up, so it doesn't crash, or if no one is using it, it scales down, so we don't pay a lot of money. but we also need a lot of extra service, okay? Because we need to manage the sessions. So if I go in and have a session with the agent, I need that to be stored. If he goes in, we need that to be stored. We need long-term memory, because if I access and I access again in 2 days, I want the agent to remember who I am, okay? And then we need all the tracing, logging, monitoring, all of this for enterprises is very relevant, okay? Because say you have some compliance issue, you need to be able to go back and see what happened there, okay? So up to now, we cover all of this, the development. Now we're gonna cover this part, okay, the deployment. I'm gonna directly show you. That agent that we've built, this one, the complex agent that does all the parallel search and all of this, how would you deploy that to Agent Engine, okay? It's very simple, okay? Now, we do need to instantiate our project and location because we're going into the cloud, we're not in our local host anymore, and I can wrap my agent, so the root agent that I was developing, I can wrap it in this library. This is how I would enable tracing, it's really, really simple in the cloud. And then I do agentengine.create. I give it a name, I give it the libraries it needs to run, I give it some extra packages if the agent needs extra packages, which in my case, my extra packages are the other agent, the simpler agent that I was using, and I can enable some variables. Okay, let me close this. With this I would run Python deploy blah blah blah, and you would get that deployed. Okay. And where would you see this? So again, same thing, if I go into agent platform, agents, deployments, I can see all the agents that I have deployed in my Google Cloud, okay? So you can see some of them are ADK, some of them are not, some of them are A2A agents, some of them are custom agents, so you can deploy pretty much anything, okay? And if I go in, so this is already deployed, okay? This is in my platform, in my cloud running. If I go in, the cool part is I get a very similar experience to what I saw in my local host, okay? So I get a playground here, and I can say, what was YouTube revenue in 2022? Okay, now I'm testing my agent, but I'm testing my agent in a productive environment, okay? In the cloud, it will scale up if we all go in, okay? I'm testing it. This has an API that you could call and create your own UI, okay? But you can see the functionality is pretty much the same, okay? How will you access this with the SDK? So you can see here the query URL. This is the SDK that I would call to query my agent, okay, if I wanted to create a custom UI. And you can see that it has the same things that we had before, okay? We have the traces, but these traces are in cloud, okay? They're not in my local host. So I can see the traces that whatever happened in my agent, I only ran it once, okay? In this dashboard, I could see all the metrics. Let me see, I guess you could see I did a session, one turn, one agent invocation. Let me show you a bit more of traces. So imagine for an enterprise, this is my demo agent, but imagine an enterprise that has this deployed and it have thousands of users using it. They can see if the agent is throwing any errors, they can see the token count, how much money they're spending, they can see evaluation, they can go here and see in models how many model calls are being done, if the model is failing, if the model is not failing. So you have all this out of the box in the tool, okay? And finally, you have this part of memory, okay? I don't have any memory in my agent, but you can have long-term memory within your agent. This means that if I say the typical example is an agent for an airline, and I'm like, I always fly in the aisle seat, and I don't like to fly in the window seat, and my name is Julia, and I have a kid, or I fly with my dog, okay? I want my agent, every time I go in, to know these facts, okay? So you can have long-term memory, okay? How does long-term memory work within an agent? Okay, this is a service, so to create long-term memory, you pretty much do the same thing as you would do on a RAG service, okay? So before the long-term memory, you have sessions, okay, what we've been talking about. So when I go into an agent, a session is created. Okay, so with my user ID, session number 1, okay? Every event that happens in the agent is being appended to the sessions. and the agent does list events to see what's happening in that session. Okay? How do I generate memories? Okay? You can use a service like Memory Bank or create your own service that would generate memories at specific time sets. Okay? So it will get the information from the session, so every conversation, everything we've had in that conversation, and generate a memory of what is being talked. So it will kind of like summarize the conversation. How does the agent use this? It will use it with a tool. So I can provide my agent with a tool that queries that database. Okay? It does the retrieval of the memories and the writing of the memories. Okay? This is a bit complicated or a bit more advanced than what we've been seeing, so I'm leaving you here a bunch of examples as well. Okay? This memory service, it works with Agent Engine, which is what I've been showing you, but it works with any service. So I'm leaving you here an example with Kubernetes, an example with Cloud Run. Okay? It's very, very interesting, this part. Cool. So, any questions on the development part, on the deployment part?
We see like a web interface. What kind of interfaces can this interface access?
So the web interface that you've seen, this playground, is just a playground for you to test the agent in a deploy state. But you will need to create your own interface. Okay, so if you want to expose this to, exactly, you would need to integrate with this URL with a webhook, create a Python code that calls this URL.
As an API.
Exactly, exactly. But the other way to do it, so if you have internal agents, you can use this. Let me show you. This is the last thing I'm going to show you. Another tool, or in Copilot, for example, they have the same thing. They have this type of internal landing. We have this type of internal landing, same thing as Copilot, where you can interact with all the agents. Okay, so if I go here into agents, this is for internal usage, for internal in your company. Say, for example, Telefónica provides it to all their employees. Okay, these are the agents that I have. See, the Alphabet earnings is pre-shown here, so I can interact with my agent in this custom.
Scoping happens also.
The permissions and all of that? Exactly. You manage this through here. So there's an admin console for this interface. So pretty much this is a UI that we've built on top of the agents, okay? And you can manage it here. Okay, so I could, let me show you. I could click here, add agent, and see, add the URL from the agent engine with that. And I would bring that in, okay? And from each of the agents, I could, let's see the Alphabet earnings. I can provide user permissions and all of this, okay? So that's like kind of like the administrator part of that. And if not, if you want to expose it to the external clients, you need to create a custom UI with the API. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to ask about the in-context learning setting. It's kind of specific way of evaluating continual learning. The memory bank that you just showed, it's the way to assess if we want to know the accumulated knowledge over several prompts.
The thing is like the agent will never learn by itself, okay? So if you give it memory, it's not learning, it's just doing RAG, retrieval. So we don't have a service for retroalimenting the LLM. So it's only doing RAG. The thing is you need to do evaluation on if the RAG is being done correctly. But the agent will never learn by itself.
Okay, so it's really like a cache, right? Like
exactly, it's like a database where it's pulling information by my user. Say I access user ID Julia, so it brings in, kind of like pre-populates the agent with all the knowledge that it has. But it's like in the prompt. It's not that the agent has learned who I am.
So there is no other way to share knowledge among prompts?
No. Okay. It's by memory, by user ID, or by app.
Okay.
But it's like a RAG service.
I consider it's a general question, not directly by the application, but I am worried because I consider that in the near future all our students in university need to learn to use AI agent in the different areas, biology, social science, physics, and so on, or machine learning in physics, for example. For example, here in Granada, University of Granada has an agreement with Google. We have a Google account,
Okay,
and so
yeah, you
on. We have the
compare.
access to Gemini, and so on. But the agent consumption of tokens is high. Then we would like, or I would like, to design any kind of project for a student, but to learn to work with human from 3 points of view. We need to work human eye decision making, human eye co-creation, and human eye oversight and governance in the level of teacher and professor and so on. How is possible to work in the system probably using GEMA instead of Gemini? We reduce the cost, sure, but how is the way to introduce the kind of learning, to introduce people in the use of the agentic AI, together generative AI, but is really necessary to introduce the layer of agentic AI together to the prompt engineering? How is possible? Because my worry is always the potential cost, because the high consumption.
Yeah, that's
What do
the
you
worry
think?
of the enterprises as well, because I don't know if you saw, there's some news a couple of weeks ago that Uber ran through the whole year entire budget in 2 months, because they gave cloud code to the users, to their internal employees, and the token cost, since it's a pay-as-you-go service, there is this is a topic that is being explored right now, because until now the models were good, but you were not putting them massively out in production or massively out into your student hands. It was like more controlled POCs or more controlled stuff. So now that the models and the agents are being put into the hands of every student or every enterprise, the thing is, like, when we talk with clients and when we have conversation with clients, it's different for students, but when we have conversation with clients, it's cool. Maybe you're spending, I don't know, $1,000 per employee per day, but how can we calculate the return on investment? You're pushing to production 1 million more lines of code every time, or you're shipping product. Before you would ship a new functionality of the code in a week, now you're shipping it in 1 day. So you need to find a metric that justifies the usage of your student and play with that. The only thing we can do, and the only thing Google or Anthropic or OpenAI are doing, you can set budget limits. So once a student has consumed 1,000 tokens per day, you stop the usage. But it's kind of like more of a change of mentality of, we're not paying for subscriptions anymore, we're paying in pay-per-use, but we're getting back in exchange, I don't know, an increase on productivity of the students, or so it's hard. It is hard. I would say set up budget limits and try to find that metric that justifies the spend. In enterprise, obviously, it's much easier because it's a
It's possible
exactly
to analyze and to have
the
a
impact.
for
Yeah.
the impact and the return.
Yeah.
Because really you
Yeah.
have a business.
Yeah.
Theoretical no.
Yeah.
But in university, the metric is the formation of the learning of the professional.
Which is
for the
a bit
future.
subjective.
Is, of course, there is a metric.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the people using the system are not specialists, and they commit errors and can even maybe terrible with some errors, because probably the lack of knowledge provoke the intensive use instead to reflect about what I need really in order to have the prompt.
It is hard. Yeah, I think there's some plans for like Gemini, Google Cloud student plans and all of that. But that's the only thing I could tell you. Like, there's a specific Google for Education plan that I assume is taking into account this type of stuff. But I wouldn't know. Setting budget limits is the only way I can see right now.
It is necessary to.
I know it is a new time for sure.
For me, this is very important because really it's a new time completely. We are starting. We are at the beginning of the new era. Really.
Yeah, and you need to get hands-on so the people
and
can
then really it is important for people from the AI area, like people here in the room, for But
to be
here the
able to
people are people developing AI.
Yeah.
But it also very important for the people,
Yeah.
users,
Yeah.
intelligent users
Yeah.
of the, no users are classical user of
Yeah.
Gemini or,
Yeah,
or,
yeah, yeah.
or any other generative AI.
Yeah.
But it's important for the professional
Sí, sí.
point of view. And then
Yeah.
I am worried about that because in fact, the current study, the company want to hire people that
Yeah.
can work and can do this
Thing is, like, we will
co-intelligence.
change mindsets and people will know how to actually work with it. I think the licensing price will change at some point. Right now we're burning tokens because if not, we cannot develop the models. At some point, the models will be stabilized, they will be cheaper, and you will be paid for a license instead of pay per use. But as of now, this is what it is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Well, please, any other comment, any other question?
I'll share the slides, it's a lot of stuff, so if you have questions, I think they have my email. You can throw me an email. Yeah.
Carmen, please.
First of all, thank you for your talk. It's been so interesting. I discovered a lot of new possibilities with Google Cloud. But regarding to what Paco said, I'm a bit confused of which of these things could have been tried without any cost. I mean, could we try everything you've shown us?
No, actually, none of them. You can try them without any cost. That's the good part of AI Studio is consumer. So most of for example, the grounding with search, you can try it in AI Studio. Grounding with maps, you can try it in AI Studio. But the rest of it is thought for a company, so it's on a pay-per-use. It is true that Google Cloud has a $300 program that you can ask, and single thing we've done is less than €1. You would have to be crazy to spend $300, but it does have a cost.
Okay, and how can we access to those 300?
You sign up. If you search Google Cloud $300, you will see.
Okay.
Let me see. Google Cloud 300 free credit. And a lot of the products have a free trial, okay, so. See? I didn't see it. Well, back here you could see. So when you sign up, you get $300 of credits. Okay, here it is.
Okay.
Just for signing up for 90 days.
And with that, we could try
everything, yeah. And it's very, very cheap. As long as you're not mining Bitcoin,
okay.
you
it's just to try all these new features and
to
test them.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? I'll be around for the coffee, so if you have questions there.
Well, let's go to the coffee.
Thank you, guys.